Hello, I am Drag, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about things that confuse me about the internet and art stuff and all that nonsense, because that's what I want to talk about. And the first thing actually kind of relates to what I'm drawing, but not necessarily what I'm drawing, but how I'm drawing it. In this picture, I decided to challenge myself and draw in another artist's style, or at least replicate their style to the best of my ability. And the first thing is that confuses me is the concept of art style theft. Now, this is confusing for me because concept of art style theft is already kind of absurd to me, because the concept of an art style isn't something that you can steal. It's something that you could try and imitate, but you can't steal an art style. At least not as I understand it. Because the way that I understand an art style is an art style is basically a math equation, but not really. So the best way that I could describe it is an art style is basically the show your work portion of a math equation, where you get the answer, but everybody comes to it in their own way. Whether that way is textbook correct or not, the answer at the end is still correct. So that's why the whole concept of art style theft doesn't really make sense to me. And especially when you get to the more industry levels, where you need to be what's called a style chameleon, where you can imitate any style to the point where it does look like it was drawn by one person, because that's just how animation works, unless that's what you're going for. But most of the time, that's not what people are going for. That's the first thing. The next thing is people who say digital art isn't real art. Now, look, I used to be young and stupid too, okay? I was in the 8th grade once, and I used to think, oh, digital art isn't real art, until I saw like an actual digital artist. Funny enough, it was actually someone who went to my school. I'm still friends with them. And like their art was like, oh my god, I was like, wait, this is digital art? Oh shit, this is art. And I realized the reason why I said digital art wasn't real art was because of my lack of understanding of what digital art actually was. And the reason why, the main reason why these people are seen as morons in my head is because generally the people who say digital art isn't real art could not distinguish a digital piece from a traditional piece if you put it in front of them. Basically, what I'm saying is, there are ways to make traditional art look digital, and vice versa. So if you put one of two of those images side by side, and you're like, oh, so which of these pieces is the digital piece? They would point to the digital. I mean, they would point to the traditional piece. But it was a trick question because both pieces were actually digital. But I also find that people like that also think that the only art style that's valid is realism. And I mean, that's a whole other can of worms that I really don't want to get into, because I do not have the mental energy to explain how asinine that is. Like, if you like realism, that's fine. But it's nowhere near the only thing that exists. But that kind of goes into one of my next points, or the next thing that confuses me, and that's unpopular opinion videos that are the safest opinions ever, because they're going against arguments that are from the 1980s, early 1990s. And I know what I was just saying, but yes, even the people who say, oh, digital art isn't real art, granted, yes, those people still do exist, but most people just write them off as idiots because they are. What I mean by safe opinions are like, oh, the opinion's basically saying like, oh, artists deserve to be paid for their work. Yeah, we know that. This stuff like, oh, digital art's real art. Yeah, we know that. Tracing is bad, but it's okay to use references. We know that. It's just like the safest stuff. There was this one D'Angelo Wallace video where he was talking about unpopular opinions, and it wasn't until the end of the video when he read a comment that even changed his mind about all of the unpopular opinions that he just read. And that comment was, all of the real unpopular opinions are down at the bottom because they're actually unpopular. His whole perspective on every comment that he had read up to that point was completely changed, because he was getting them from a Twitter poll. And if you don't know how Twitter works, basically the top comments are the ones that are most favorited, the ones that most people agree with. I was like, yes, this is exactly what I've been saying. The real unpopular opinions are the ones that people don't talk about, because they don't want to get canceled, because they don't want to get yelled at for an opinion. Like an opinion like, hey, some artists charge too much money for their commissions. Oh, well, artists deserve to be paid a living wage. Yes, that's true, but you're catering, but right now you are catering to Twitter people on Twitter. And I actually have a whole video about that I'll post right now, I guess. I feel like that's one of the real unpopular opinions. Granted, it's becoming a bit more popular now that people are like, yeah, artists do deserve to be paid for their work, but there's also a line, you know? Yes, you deserve to be paid a living wage, whatever that may be. At the same time, don't expect one commission to cover your entire rent if you don't have the following for it. And that one doesn't really lead into my next point, but I'm just gonna kind of hop into it. And this whole tracing thing, people on the internet go berserk over tracing. If someone even jokingly says, oh, you traced that, you can expect a whole fucking Twitter mob. You're like, oh my god, you traced that, you're a piece of shit, I can't believe you, like, what the fuck, you know what, you don't even deserve a job anymore. It's like, my guy. The context behind that is that they traced an image once when they were in high school because they didn't understand how a hand worked. And everyone knows that Twitter is like one of the most toxic places on the internet. But that's one of those things where, does the punishment really fit the crime? Because there was literally one artist, I'm not gonna say who, but it was like it was kind of a huge thing a couple years ago. But this artist, who was a comic book artist, posted this sketch. Let me reiterate, it was a sketch, a very, very, very rough sketch. And they posted this, and the image in the background wasn't even in the correct perspective. And they literally said, granted they said after the fact, but they said, oh yeah, no, the character in the background was traced over. I need to get them in the correct perspective. And that's why, I traced that. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. But Twitter and some people on YouTube went berserk, and they're like, oh my god, how could you trace? You're a piece of shit. You know, everything I said earlier. And it's just like, well, and then it wasn't until industry artists stepped in and said, yeah, no, we trace all the time too. I don't know, this is the dumbest thing that you can, if they're just doing it to get the perspective. Like, you think we have time to memorize each and every perspective of everything ever? You better sit your ass down. And I really liked seeing that, because generally the people who tend to get outraged over these things have no idea how these things work. So when someone says, oh yeah, no, I kind of like traced over that hand so I could get the image right, and then I redid it, and like artists are incredibly transparent about that. Like, oh my god, I can't believe that you traced it, I can't believe that you did that, how could you do that, oh my god. It's like, oh, okay, why don't you, like, okay, I'm sorry that my hand drawing skills aren't as good as your hand drawing skills, beginner artist who's still in high school. Why don't you teach me how you draw hands? And it's crickets. And the last thing that I don't understand is the obsession with face reveals. Why are people so obsessed with face reveals? Why do you need to know what I look like to enjoy my art? I can kind of understand it, where it's like, oh yeah, you're a human behind that face, but that's what my voice does. I don't know, as far as I'm aware, there's no technology that can currently ramble on about nonsense as long as I do, and say like and as much, without it sounding hella awkward. So why do you need to see my face? You don't need to see my face to enjoy my art. I know why you want to see my face. You want to know if I'm good No. I do have one story where this one person was obsessed with seeing my face to the point where it was kind of weird. It was very uncomfortable, actually. Incredibly uncomfortable. So, I blocked them. But that's a story for another time. If someone doesn't want to show their face, you are not entitled to see their face. Fuck off. So that is where I will call the video. Thank you for watching and listening. Like, subscribe, comment below what are some things that confuse you about the art community. And yeah. Bye.